This is a story you've probably never heard, connecting forgotten documents from several government agencies. Buried in the CIA's archives is a report on bright objects seen over Nepal in 1968. After several sightings for weeks, the kicker came on March 25th. A huge metallic disc-shaped object with a 6-foot base and 4 feet in height was found in a crater at Baltashar, 5 miles northeast of Pokhara. Portions of a similar object were found nearby. Interestingly, we found something else. It hasn't been discussed by anyone as far as we know, and it may blow the story wide open. We're a new channel covering under-the-radar declassified files like this. Subscribe to join us. The paper trail continues in an unlabeled Defense Intelligence Agency file, documenting a program known as Moondust. This was a covert op carried out by the U.S. Air Force during the Cold War that aimed to recover debris that had survived re-entry from Earth. The aim was to find Soviet hardware, but documents show they may have found something else. The DIA's Moondust files contain countless reports of objects found in India, New Zealand, and Africa. Many of these are unofficially referred to as space balls and appear to be debris from rocket launches. A hydrazine tank, for example, is very similar to the objects found. But the discovery in Nepal was different. A review of the several hundred pages of files showed this may have been the only disc-shaped object wrapped up in the Moondust project. Which begs the question, where did it come from? And why hasn't this case seen more public exposure? Let's start with the timeline. On April 11, 1968, the CIA first reported a disc was found in a crater in the Kaski region of Nepal. It had crashed 17 days earlier on March 25th. Another document, this one from the U.S. Embassy in Kathmandu, reveals the Royal Nepalese Army showed 2 of the objects it found to the American Defense Attaché on April 23rd. On May 20th, the Army gave photos of 2 objects to the same official. It's at this point when Moondust is alerted. Here's where it gets interesting. We know this because of a third document, buried in a different archive from the DIA. These pages show the embassy forwarded the photographs to the Air Force back in the U.S. 2 photos were logged. The first of a triangular-shaped object. The second of the circular metal disc referred to in the CIA report. Curiously, these photos were not included in declassified files. A memorandum dated 6 days after the receipt of the photos from an Air Force colonel shows a redacted individual requested evaluation of the embassy message. They also mention a redacted intelligence report that has not shown up anywhere publicly. Here's something else. 1 day later, the words, "Do not reproduce file with original intelligence report" were written on the memo. It's unknown where this report is. But see the note for yourself. It seems to suggest someone working with the case did not want whatever details it held to be disseminated further. Why they wanted this, we don't know. But the story doesn't stop. Rarely seen communications between the embassy in Nepal and the DIA shows both sides kept talking about the disc and other debris that summer. A document dated July 23, 1968 shows U.S. officials by then were fully coordinated with the Nepalese government regarding the, quote, space objects. It also tells us that besides the triangular and disc-shaped objects, there was also a smaller oval found. These 3 were turned over to a mysterious redacted official. It's unclear if this redacted person was working with the U.S. Embassy or not, but they received access that the embassy wasn't able to get. Of note, they only entered the timeline after Project Moondust is alerted. Could the redacted individual be associated with the U.S. Air Force? We don't know and can't speculate. But there's even more. The groups discuss a 4th object. The local army tells the embassy and the redacted individual something resembling a nose cone exists but cannot be seen. The report elaborates that this object is impossible to see. It's unknown what exactly this language means. By July, the commander-in-chief of the Nepalese army reportedly asks for the first 3 objects back ASAP. The DIA writes they expected the objects to be returned back in Nepal 9 days later, which seems to imply they were removed from the country by the redacted individual. So where did it come from? It was about this point when the defense secretary in Nepal asked American officials that very question. The embassy said it didn't know, and we have no information if the redacted individual had an answer. The document does provide some ideas, though none are concrete. For one, it cites a redacted officer who visited the crash locations. They suggested the objects could be man-made. The triangular piece could have been a motor nozzle, and the metal disc an electrical connector, they wrote. They said the mysterious fourth object must be a motor nozzle. A British attaché is also cited. They suggest the debris could be related to the Soviet launch of the Cosmos 208 satellite. Now, we do know a declassified NORAD bulletin shows Cosmos 208 did launch the last week of March. NASA, though, suggests the launch was a success and mentions it deployed a high-energy gamma-ray experiment capsule. Nothing in the public archives suggests it malfunctioned or broke up over Nepal. The document trail essentially stops here, aside from one more piece of info. On July 30th, 1968, the DIA reports the American attaché briefed the ambassador on the moon dust situation. In the meeting, the point was raised of a desire that we give government of Nepal positive info if at all possible due to, and it's redacted from here. We don't know the reasoning for why officials wanted to control the narrative surrounding the space debris. We also don't know what prompted the highest-ranking military official in Nepal to demand the objects back ASAP. And we don't know who the redacted individual was that came into the investigation and took 3 of the objects out of the country. We also don't know why the handwritten note that the intelligence report sent to the Air Force was requested not to be reproduced. There are many questions here, and there isn't a clear explanation of the source of the debris, or why this appears to be the only disc-shaped object ever retrieved by Project Moondust. Is it possible it was Soviet or Chinese? Definitely. Though the British explanation seems suspect. Is it also possible the objects have another, perhaps otherworldly origin? And that prompted the extra attention from the US government? The sum of all information suggests that yes, that too is possible. Given that portions of the documents are redacted, there are pieces of the story we don't have. But this is a case that has seemingly gone unnoticed by journalists, so perhaps more exposure will shed light on new details. Help us get the word out by sharing this video. All declassified documents are linked below. If you like what you hear and you want to support the channel, consider joining us on Patreon or signing up for an Audible free trial through our referral links. It really helps us out. See you next time!